Hello Senators and Legates. Welcome to Total War Tactics. Today's video is without a doubt more of a gimmick than anything else, but still really fun, and not to mention how unique it is and a good way to spice up your campaigns. As you can see, we're going to be doing this in Rome 2 with the Divide Et Impera mod enabled. We're going to be covering the usual bit of historical context, the theoretical formation, how to execute it, the army composition, how to use it in game against both the player and the AI, how to defeat it, and finally my verdict on the battle, or tactic overall actually. Also, my good friend and fellow YouTuber Immersive asked if he could cover this battle as well. So go over and check out his video. I will leave a link to it in the comments below once it's officially up. If there are any parts of this video you want to see, there are timestamps in the description for you to use. But with that said, let's introduce the tactic. The sally out tactic is quite funny in many ways. I'm fairly confident we've all seen how the Trojans defended their proud city in the movie of the same name. Not to forget the infamous Game of Thrones battle from season 8. You know what, forget the last part. We'll just call it the Troy defense tactic or sally out move instead. Now, you might be thinking, this isn't a real tactic, this is pure myth or idiocy. But that is not entirely true. In fact, it happened more than you might think. In many cases of a castle siege during the medieval age, it was found cowardice if you just stayed behind your walls and didn't at least make some form of attempt to break the siege. To mention an example, although not from the medieval era, we could talk about the siege of Alesia, where the Gauls eventually sallied out to attack Julius Caesar alongside the other Gauls on the other side of Caesar's incredible formation. Of course, as we all hopefully know, Caesar actually won the battle, which doesn't really speak up for this tactic. However, I have faith in it. Usually this move was done to attempt breaking the siege equipment of the besieger or to get an unexpected hit on their foe. However, what we are gonna do is much more in line with the Siege of Troy defense, where the infantry already guards the outside of the walls. Whether there is much truth in that event or if it's purely myth, I will let someone else decide. However, I think we should move over to why and how we'll make this work. Okay, I want you to think of this as an ordinary land battle, except your archers are safe from attacks by being on your walls, and you have machine gun-like watchtowers to demolish your enemy. By that alone, I was sold about this idea. It is even better when you think about a massive army approaching with minimal siege equipment like a few ladders, as the AI always does. The attacker would rely solely on these pieces of wood, which are easily flammable by your archers. If you can burn them down before they reach the walls, the besieger needs to go through the gates. The gates! A choke point with boiling oil dropping down on their faces. However, the trick is you usually can't burn down all the ladders before they reach the gate. That is where your sally out tactic comes in. By a sudden attack like this, your opponent won't be prepared and out of formation. There's just this one problem. Originally, I tested this with Greek hoplites. Once the battle started, they would run outside the gates and form up just in front of the walls. But whenever I did this, they always got stuck or glitched out in the gate. That wouldn't work, especially not against a player. But if the units sallying out had guerrilla deployment, they will be outside of the walls already. Fucking perfect. The only bad thing is, most guerrilla deployment units aren't that strong for the civilized factions. However, if you are an Iberian or Germanic faction, it would be a completely different story. Almost all of their units have the ability, making it possible to pull this off. These infantry units will defend the walls, while your skirmishers burn down their equipment. Now, I doubt your units will be able to make it back inside again due to the whole gates thing. Yet that doesn't count for your cavalry, as they are fewer in numbers and much faster. They can just run in and out of trouble if needed. I will also add in a tip depending on who you are facing, because the AI and a player will possibly react differently to this. After the battle starts and a player sees your deployment, they will most likely abandon their equipment to fight you. So always keep the fighting near towers or walls to your advantage. Against the AI, they are programmed to scale the walls and will just pull through your lines. Pure bullshit in my opinion. But if you can engage the enemy as soon as they are in the range of your archers, you should be able to slow them down fast enough. Of course, they will usually form up depending on the city and where your enemies attack from. And if he sieges you from multiple fronts, just think of it as a defeat in detail battle. Crush one side and move over to the other, where some spears might have slowed them down already. Sadly, this tactic doesn't work for the newer games such as Divide Et Troy, as all units just spawn ladders out of their arse. Ironic how the Siege of Troy inspired the tactic, but the developers added in a feature to make it obsolete in that exact game. Enough of all the negativity, let's talk about the army composition. My army was very defensive and focused on slowing down the enemy. The Lugos faction's most elite spear units had 20 in melee defense plus large shields to keep them safe from arrows. That's why I chose them. Due to a rural Gio, who is my opponent for this battle, and I could only bring 5 skirmishers. Still, these guys both had stalk to stay safe on the walls and spears to go into combat once they are out of ammo. Other than that, this army is filled with decent units ready for a fight. We also had a lot of gold left, but I spent most of that on experience for once rather than just choose the most expensive units around. With our army constructed, let us form up and go into a battle against Gio D, who played as the Odysseans. Before it actually officially kicks off, I will just say how Gio originally didn't want to play a siege battle, as he doesn't usually like them. So please give him some love in the comments for being such a huge chat and crossing his boundaries. The battle instantly started with me rushing my most elite swordsman over to his siege tower, hoping to scare him. He dropped the equipment and immediately rushed over to protect his units. During this, he accidentally got his general too close to our swordsman, allowing us to toss many javelins at him. As he dropped all of his siege equipment to focus on killing our troops, our archers had more ammo to spend on firing from above. I just had them on fire at will, as I didn't want them to leave the position. But they could have been a lot more effective if I chose the right targets. Still, the battle looked to be going in our favor as units began to rout. Some of ours too, but mostly his. Seeing a massive gap between the two main battles going on, I pulled out my cavalry in an attempt to exploit it. But Gio made it impossible by using his few reserves instead. I saw his general that kept harassing some of my units out on the flanks. We moved out our cavalry to take them out. Once he lay dead on the ground, we finished off the right side and cohesively attacked the left. I actually had a lot more trouble than expected, but we still won. The tactic worked. Once again, give some love to Gio, who really didn't like siege assaults. And it is understandable to see why, when you look at the broken stats. Many units did well, the swordsmen, night runners and even the cavalry, for getting some crucial kills. They can all be MVPs in my mind. But if we do some quick math in terms of how many kills we got compared to Gio's losses, we quickly realized 357 men died from either friendly fire or more likely by the machine gun towers. Those kills add up to roughly 8%, a massive advantage for the defender. I'm not saying this is the best way to defend a city, but it works and it's damn fun. With that said, let's quickly go over to our battle against the AI. So, I will tell you now, there's a weird glitch when you do this against the AI that made 2 of my 3 attempts crash. And this was actually my worst attempt, but you'll just have to take my disgusting Danish words for it. This time I defended a barbarian village, just to show you it is possible for both wall layouts. I did have some trouble with my archer's range, so I added a few outside of the city instead. But they were still effective enough to burn down most of the enemy's ladders who tried to push through our lines. The few that actually got through ended up being killed and routed as soon as they left the equipment alone. And with that stuck behind our lines, all we needed to do was finish off the enemy because they couldn't reach it anymore. There was also this weird thing in the end where the enemy general moved up on this ledge. It's quite funny, but doesn't really matter either, but I just wanted to show it to you. Here are the stats for the battle. Again, it is clearly visible how powerful the towers are. I doubt it comes as a surprise for any Total War player, but now it is clearly visible for everyone. Excellent, let's move on. But to be honest, I honestly don't actually know how to defeat this tactic. Like, your opponent has no idea if this is gonna happen and can't react fast enough once he does. I don't know if it's better to keep all your units together as Gio did, or to spread them out throughout the entire wall, as that can be countered by taking out one assault at a time. This one I honestly need your thoughts on. My best guess is just to be a better player. That is a whack answer. I have no clue. Moving on to my final verdict, this is probably the best thing I've ever done in terms of tactics. I had a blast with this, and I'm honestly stunned it actually worked. This is most likely not the best tactic, especially not against the AI, but it is really fun, unique, and a good way to surprise your friends in an online battle. The best thing is, we don't need pikes for any actual decent defense strategy here. This tactic is definitely for the ones who want to try something new and don't care too much about the results. Nevertheless, it is definitely a must try. And with that said, I would like to say goodbye and spread happiness.